Hello and welcome to another segment of Types and Figures. Well, as we continue to look at the nations of the Bible, today we're going to turn our attention to Ethiopia. As we search the scriptures, we find that God speaks of Ethiopia in a similar way to how he speaks about Egypt, and that is that they are both types and figures of the world or the kingdom of Satan. In fact, there are many places in the Bible where Ethiopia is mentioned along with Egypt. For example, we find in Isaiah 20, verse 3, "A sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia." And then in Isaiah 20, verse 5, we read, "And they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and of Egypt, their glory." Egypt and Ethiopia both go hand in hand. And in some places, the Lord mentions Ethiopia but not Egypt, and vice versa, but they do carry the same spiritual picture. And we have a good explanation for why that's the case from the genealogy in Genesis 10. We read in Genesis 10, verse 6, "And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim." Now the name Cush here is the same Hebrew word translated as Ethiopia. We know exactly where the line of descent for the people of Ethiopia originated. They were the descendants of Cush, and they can be traced back to his father Ham, who was one of the sons of Noah. Now, the Hebrew word translated as Mizraim is the same word that's translated elsewhere as Egypt or Egyptians. So the Egyptians are also the son of Ham, just like the Ethiopians. Cush and Mizraim are brothers, and therefore, Ethiopia and Egypt are connected, and they go hand in hand. And of course, you're familiar with Noah and his family aboard the ark. Well, Noah and his family disembarked from the ark, and they started civilization anew. And one line of that family was Egypt, and one line was Ethiopia. And if you look at a map of Africa, you'll see the land of Egypt, and right next to it, its neighbor is right there, Ethiopia. So it makes sense that they would both dwell together close to each other in proximity because they're brothers. All right, now let's consider a passage in 2 Chronicles 14. And in that, Asa, king of Judah, took away the high places and built cities and made walls, and that they built and prospered. Built and prospered. That's the language of salvation and building the kingdom of God. We then read that a large Ethiopian army comes that greatly outnumbers Asa and Judah, but Asa beseeches the Lord, and he grants them victory. The Ethiopians are overthrown, and we read that the men of Judah carried away much spoil, including sheep and camels in abundance. So we can see this passage from 2 Chronicles 14 as a spiritual picture of the gospel going forth in the day of salvation during the church age. The men of Judah were victorious in the battle over the Ethiopians, just as the gospel went forth victorious from the midst of the congregations at various times over the course of the 1955 years of the church age. And as Ethiopia was conquered in this account, well, in the same way, the kingdom of Satan was overcome as Christ bound the strong man at the cross, which enabled him to spoil his house and ransack his kingdom, freeing the elect who were in captivity to sin and Satan. You've been listening to Types and Figures, Ethiopia, on eBible Fellowship.